I'm Hope, 32 female. I live in a quiet apartment on the third floor of a brick building, the kind with a squeaky fire escape and neighbors who leave packages for you by your door. I work as a data analyst for a mid-sized tech firm, a job that suits my personality perfectly. I find comfort in numbers, patterns, and the undeniable logic of a well-organized spreadsheet. For years, my life has been a carefully constructed routine. A quiet sanctuary built to protect the fragile peace I fought so hard to find after my world fell apart. But this story is about how that sanctuary was invaded by a woman who tried to destroy my brother's memory for her own twisted reasons, and how I used the very skills I hide behind to dismantle her life, piece by piece. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. My life at Innovatech Solutions was, for the most part, predictable. I came in at 8:30, put on my noise-canceling headphones, and dove into seas of data. I translated user behavior into actionable insights, built dashboards that made complex metrics look simple, and found satisfaction in the clean, irrefutable truth of a conclusion backed by evidence. My immediate team was great, and my direct manager was a reasonable man who valued my work and left me alone to do it. The ecosystem was stable. Then, Veronica was hired. Veronica was brought in as the new head of marketing, a position that put her several tiers above me, but in a department that frequently collaborated with mine. She was 38, impeccably dressed, and possessed a brand of aggressive charisma that both impressed and unsettled people. In meetings, she spoke with a cutting certainty, dismissing ideas with a flick of her wrist and a sharp, "Let's circle back on that offline," which was corporate code for "that's a terrible idea and we're never speaking of it again." She had a way of looking at you that felt less like she was listening and more like she was scanning for weaknesses. From the beginning, I felt a strange and unwelcome focus from her. While my work was mostly with the product development teams, marketing often requested data reports to guide their campaigns. My reports, which had always been praised for their clarity and depth, were suddenly never good enough for Veronica. She'd call me into her glass-walled office, the corner office on our floor, and pick apart my work on grounds that felt entirely subjective. "This visualization lacks punch, Hope," she'd say, tapping a perfectly standard bar chart. "I need something that tells a story, something with more vitality." I would patiently explain the statistical significance of the data, why the chart was the most accurate representation, but she would just wave her hand dismissively. "You're too in the weeds. Think bigger picture." It was frustrating, but I chalked it up to a new executive wanting to make her mark. I'd revise the reports, add a few more colors she liked, and send them back. But her scrutiny felt personal. She would ask questions that strayed from the professional. "What do you do on the weekends, Hope? You seem like a homebody." Or, "No partner, a pretty girl like you." The questions were always coded in a syrupy, fake concern that made my skin crawl. My best friend, Chloe, a lawyer who had seen me through the darkest days of my life, noticed the change in my demeanor. Over our weekly dinner, I found myself venting about Veronica. "It's like she's probing me," I said, pushing pasta around my plate. "She doesn't care about the data. She's trying to figure me out, and I don't like it." Chloe, ever the pragmatist, raised an eyebrow. "Is she like this with everyone?" "Not really," I admitted. "She's tough on her own team, but this feels different. It's targeted." "Document it," Chloe advised immediately. "Every weird comment, every unnecessary meeting, every baseless criticism. Create a paper trail. You never know when you'll need it." I started a private document on my computer that night, labeling it Vlog. I felt a bit paranoid, but I trusted Chloe's instincts. The entries started to pile up. Oct 3, V asked why I don't have any photos on my desk. I told her I like a minimalist workspace. She said it was sad. Oct 10, V joked in a team meeting that my brain was probably a spreadsheet. A few people laughed uncomfortably. Oct 19, V insisted I stay late to reformat a presentation for her, then forgot she needed it and left at 5 p.m. The unsettling behavior escalated when our company announced its annual charity gala. It was a huge event, and Veronica was in charge of the planning committee. She made it a point to announce in a cross-departmental meeting that she expected everyone to bring a plus one. Her eyes lingered on me as she said it. It's about community and partnership. After we don't want anyone to feel left out or lonely. Later that day, she cornered me in the break room. So, Hope, who's the lucky guy you're bringing to the gala? She asked, her smile wide and predatory. I'm probably just coming by myself, Veronica. I'm not much for big parties. Oh, nonsense, she said, stepping a little too close. There must be someone, a brother maybe, a handsome older brother to show you off. A cold, sharp pain lanced through my chest. The question was so specific, so out of the blue, that it knocked the air out of my lungs. My brother, Daniel, had been my whole world. He was the sun to my moon, the extrovert to my introvert, the one who could always make me laugh, even when I felt like crying. And he was gone. My brother passed away, I said, my voice tight and quiet. For a split second, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, not sympathy, but a glint of satisfaction. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a mask of exaggerated pity. Oh, you poor thing, I'm so sorry, I had no idea. She placed a hand on my arm, and I had to fight the urge to recoil. Her touch felt like ice. I mumbled something about it being a long time ago and made my escape, my heart hammering against my ribs. I sat at my desk, staring at my screen but seeing nothing. Why would she ask that? A handsome, older brother. The phrasing was so bizarre. I shook my head, trying to dismiss it as a strange coincidence, a clumsy attempt at small talk. But the unease lingered, a dark cloud on the horizon of my carefully ordered life. That night, I wrote in my vlog, Nav 5, V asked about my brother. I told her he passed away. Her reaction was off. I didn't know it then, but that single, chilling interaction was not a coincidence. It was the first move in a game I didn't even know I was playing. The charity gala arrived 2 weeks later, a glittering affair held in a downtown hotel ballroom. I attended out of a sense of professional obligation, planning to make a brief appearance and slip out unnoticed. I wore a simple black dress, determined to be as inconspicuous as possible. For the first hour, my plan worked. I chatted with my teammates, donated to the silent auction, and avoided Veronica, who was flitting around the room like a monarch, accepting praise for the event's success. I was about to make my exit when David Chen, the director of People and Culture, approached me. Mr. Chen was a kind, level-headed man who was widely respected in the company. He had a calm presence that usually put people at ease, but tonight, his expression was troubled. "Hope, do you have a minute?" he asked, his voice low. "Let's step into the hallway." A knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. We found a quiet alcove away from the music and the crowd. Mr. Chen looked deeply uncomfortable. "I need to discuss a serious matter with you," he began. "An allegation has been made against a family member of yours, specifically your brother." I stared at him, my mind a complete blank. My brother," the words felt foreign. "My brother, Daniel, he passed away 8 years ago." Mr. Chen's face paled. He looked genuinely shocked. What? I'm sorry, I was not aware of that. Veronica," he stopped himself, running a hand over his face. "Hope, Veronica came to me this afternoon. She filed a formal complaint. She claimed that your brother has been harassing her, sending her messages, following her." The world tilted on its axis. I couldn't process the words. Harassing her? Daniel? My gentle, kind, artistic Daniel who wouldn't hurt a fly? The absurdity of it was so profound that for a moment I thought it must be a joke, a sick, twisted misunderstanding. "That's impossible," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "That's not just impossible, it's insane. He's gone. He died in a car accident when he was 22. Mr. Chen looked utterly bewildered. "She was very specific, Hope. She showed me screenshots of messages. She claimed he found out where she worked to get close to you, that she recognized him from a photo she saw somewhere. She said she was scared for her safety." Screenshots? I felt a surge of cold fury rise through the shock. Someone is sending her messages, but it is not my brother. It cannot be. This is a lie. a malicious, insane lie. She said his name was Daniel, Mr. Chen continued, his voice full of apology. She described him. Tall, dark hair, a small scar on his chin. She said you must know he's alive and are helping him hide. The scar on his chin. Daniel got that scar when he was 10, falling off his bike. It was a detail only someone who knew him or had seen clear pictures of him would know. How did she know that? My mind reeled back to her question in the break room. A handsome older brother to show you off? It wasn't a random question. It was reconnaissance. She was digging. But why? Mr. Chen, I said, my voice gaining strength from the sheer outrage. I can prove it. I have the deet. H certificate. I have photos of his grave. My parents and I visit him on his birthday every single year. Whatever game Veronica is playing, it is cruel beyond measure, and it is based on a complete fabrication. He held up a hand. I believe you, Hope. The moment you told me he was deceased, the entire situation changed. But this is now a very complex HR issue. I have a formal complaint, with what she presented as evidence, alleging criminal behavior from a family member of an employee, which she claims you are complicit in. I have to investigate this thoroughly. I felt sick. She had filed a formal complaint. This wasn't just a bizarre comment, it was a calculated attack designed to damage my career and, for some unfathomable reason, to desecrate Daniel's memory. She was using my deepest source of pain as a weapon against me. I walked back into the ballroom in a daze. I saw Veronica holding court by the bar, laughing with a group of executives. She caught my eye from across the room, and her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. She gave me a small, pitying look, a look that said, "You poor, naive girl." It was the look of a predator who had successfully cornered her prey. The fury I felt was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was a pure, cold rage that burned away the grief and shock, leaving behind a diamond-hard resolve. This wasn't just about protecting my job anymore. This was about protecting Daniel. She had picked a fight with a ghost, but she had no idea that his sister was still here, and that she would burn Veronica's world to the ground to defend his name. I left the gala without another word, my mind already working. I called Chloe the moment I got in the car. "Hope, you sound awful. What's wrong?" "She did it, Chloe," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "That woman from my work, she made up a story about Daniel. She accused him of stalking her." I explained the whole insane situation. Chloe was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was steely. "Okay," she said. "Okay, Hope, don't panic. We're going to handle this. You have your log, right? The vlog." "Yes," I said. "Good, now we fight back, but not with emotion. We fight back with data. It's what you do best." The next day, I emailed Mr. Chen a scanned copy of Daniel's death certificate. It felt surreal, reducing the most traumatic event of my life to a PDF attachment in a corporate email. I formally stated that Veronica's claims were demonstrably false and constituted a severe form of workplace harassment against me. Mr. Chen responded within an hour, assuring me that he was taking the matter very seriously and had scheduled a meeting with Veronica. Walking into the office that morning was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I felt a mixture of dread and defiance. I could feel the whispers, the sideways glances. News, especially ugly news, travels fast in a corporate environment. I saw Veronica near the coffee machine, talking to two of her marketing managers. She saw me, and her expression hardened into a mask of cold resolve. She clearly wasn't backing down. This was her strategy: double down, play the victim, and paint me as the unstable one, covering for a dangerous relative. My mind was a chaotic storm of questions. How did she know about Daniel's scar? Where did she get a photo of him? Why was she doing this? It was the why that haunted me the most. The attack was so personal, so bizarrely specific, that it couldn't be random. There had to be a connection. I spent the morning trying to work, but my focus was shot. I kept replaying every interaction I'd had with Veronica, searching for a clue. The break room conversation, her invasive questions, her strange reaction when I told her Daniel was gone. It all pointed to a premeditated plan. She wanted to know about my brother. She needed that information for her story. The breakthrough came from the most unexpected of places, social media. On my lunch break, driven by a desperate need for answers, I did something I hadn't done in years. I logged into my old Facebook account. I had mostly abandoned it after Daniel died, the constant memories and photos of him being too painful to bear. My profile was locked down and private, but I started searching for Veronica. I found her profile easily. It was public, a carefully curated highlight reel of a perfect life. Networking events, exotic vacations, smiling photos with industry leaders. I scrolled through years of her posts, not knowing what I was looking for. It felt like searching for a single grain of sand on a vast beach. I looked through her friend list, her tagged photos, her check-ins. Nothing. No connection to my family, my hometown, my old university. I was about to give up when I decided to try one last thing. I searched my own name in her friend's posts, a long shot to see if she had ever been tagged in a photo with a mutual acquaintance. Nothing. Then I searched for Dan. Eel's name. The result hit me like a physical blow. It was a single photo, posted 7 months ago by a woman I didn't recognize. The caption read, "Amazing Marketing Conference in Austin, so inspired by the speakers, especially Veronica Lane on brand dominance." The photo showed Veronica on a panel stage, and sitting in the front row of the audience looking up at her was a man I knew. It was Mark Renshaw. My blood ran cold. Mark had been one of Daniel's college roommates. They were close for a couple of years, but had a falling out about a year before Daniel passed away. I never knew the full story, only that it was messy and involved a girl Daniel had been dating. After Daniel's death, Mark never reached out, never came to the funeral. He just vanished from our lives. My fingers trembled as I clicked on Mark's profile. He was now a marketing manager at some company in Texas. His profile picture was him and his wife smiling on a boat, and then I saw it. In his photos, under an album titled College Days, was a picture of him and Daniel. They were laughing, arms slung around each other's shoulders at a tailgate party. Daniel's scar on his chin was clearly visible. Everything clicked into place with a horrifying clarity. Veronica, the head of marketing, meets Mark, a marketing manager, at a conference. They connect, perhaps professionally, perhaps personally. Mark, trying to impress her or just making conversation, talks about his college days. Maybe he mentions his old roommate, Daniel. Maybe he even shows her a picture. This guy was a wild one, he might have said, trying to sound cool. And Veronica, for her own sick reasons, filed that information away. She must have found out Mark's old roommate had a sister, me, who now worked at the same company she was about to join. The why was still a mystery, but the how was suddenly crystal clear. This wasn't some supernatural event or a case of a mistaken identity. This was a calculated plot, and Mark Renshaw was the unwitting source of her ammunition. She had used a ghost story from my past to create a weapon in the present. I immediately called Chloe. "I found it," I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of horror and vindication. "I found the link. It's Daniel's old college roommate." I explained my discovery. Chloe listened intently. "Okay, this is it, Hope. This is her mistake. She built her entire lie on a piece of information she shouldn't have had, and she never imagined you could trace it back. She overplayed her hand." "What do I do now?" I asked. "You do what you do best," Chloe said, her voice firm. "You follow the data. You need to connect Veronica to Mark. Social media is a start, but we need more. We need irrefutable proof that they've been in contact. This is where her story completely falls apart. She claimed your brother was stalking her, but the truth is she was stalking you, or at least your past, to find a way to hurt you." The paranoia I had felt before was gone, replaced by a steely sense of purpose. She had made a mistake. She had left a trail. And I, a data analyst who spent my days finding patterns in chaos, was going to follow it all the way to the end. Armed with the knowledge of the Mark Renshaw connection, my entire approach shifted. I was no longer just defending myself, I was on the offensive. My grief and fear had crystallized into a cold, methodical focus. My apartment, once a sanctuary from the world, became my investigation headquarters. Chloe's advice echoed in my head: follow the digital breadcrumbs. My first step was to dig deeper into Veronica and Mark's connection. A single photo at a conference wasn't enough. I needed to establish a pattern of communication. I went back to their social media profiles, this time analyzing them not as a casual observer, but as a data analyst. I looked for overlaps in their professional networks on LinkedIn. They had dozens of mutual connections, which was plausible in the same industry. But then I noticed they had both attended 3 of the same smaller, more specialized marketing workshops over the past year. Coincidence? Possible, but unlikely. Next, I focused on the evidence Veronica had presented to HR, the screenshots of harassing messages supposedly from Daniel. Mr. Chen had described them as coming from an anonymous, encrypted app, making them difficult to trace. Veronica had claimed she couldn't block the user. This was her proof. But I knew it was a fabrication, which meant she had to have created it herself. The question was, how? The simplest explanation was that she had used a second phone or a text-generating app. Proving this would be nearly impossible without access to her devices. But I didn't need to prove how she sent them. I needed to prove when she started building her narrative. Her lie depended on the premise that the harassment was recent, starting after she joined Innovatech. I needed to find evidence that she was researching me and my broth. Before that. This is where my professional skills came into play. I thought about the data trail people leave online. People reuse usernames, email fragments, and other digital identifiers across multiple platforms. I started with Veronica's professional portfolio website, which was linked on her LinkedIn. I ran a reverse WHOIS lookup on her domain name. The registration details were private, a dead end, but I looked at the source code of her website. Hidden in the metadata were keywords she used for SEO: Veronica Lane Marketing, Brand Strategy Guru, and one other, an old username, Vero Lane 87. It was a small breadcrumb, but it was a start. I took Vero Lane 87 and started searching. I found a Pinterest account under that name, filled with boards about power suits, luxury travel, and motivational quotes. It was exactly what you'd expect. But I also found an old, dormant account on a photography website under the same handle. The account had only a few photos, mostly generic cityscapes. However, by using the site's own API, I could see the account's activity log. The Vero Lane 87 account had recently followed a new user, just 2 months before she was hired at Innovatech. The username she followed was Markar Creative. My heart hammered in my chest. I clicked on the profile. It was Mark Renshaw's amateur photography page. The connection was now undeniable, and crucially, it predated her employment at my company. She wasn't just a conference acquaintance, she was actively following his online presence. This was good, but I needed more. I needed something that tied her directly to me and Daniel. I thought about the photo of Daniel she must have seen, the one from Mark's college album on Facebook. How would she know to look there? Mark's profile was public, so anyone could see it, but you'd have to be specifically looking for photos of him. I went back to that college days album on Mark's Facebook. I looked at the comments under the photo of him and Daniel. Most were old, from college friends. But then I saw one recent comment from 3 months ago. It was from a woman named Jenna S. The comment was simple: "Wow, blast from the past, you guys look so young." Mark had replied, "Haha, tell me about it, Jenna. Good times." I clicked on Jenna S.'s profile. It was almost completely blank. No profile picture, no public posts, very few friends. It looked like a classic fake or burner account. But one thing stood out. Among her 10 friends was Veronica Lane. My blood turned to ice. This was it. Veronica had used a fake profile to interact with Mark's old photos, likely to see who else was in them, to gather information without using her real name. She was snooping. The comment was her mistake. It was a digital fingerprint left at the scene of the crime. She was building a file on my brother through his old roommate, and she did it before she even had a desk at my office. I took screenshots of everything: the conference photo, the LinkedIn overlaps, the photography website follow, and, most importantly, the fake Facebook profile connected to both Veronica and the photo of my brother. I organized it all into a timeline, clearly demonstrating that her interest in my family began long before her fictitious stalking claim. The question of why still lingered, a dark, ominous cloud. Why go to all this trouble? Why target me, a stranger, and my deceased brother? Was it simple, psychopathic cruelty? Was she trying to get me fired for a promotion? Or was it something deeper, something from a past I knew nothing about? I called Chloe and walked her through my findings. "This is incredible, Hope," she said, her voice a mix of awe and anger. "It's a digital stalker's playbook. She's been methodically building a false narrative for months. You have more than enough to discredit her story. The question now is how to present it." "I want to do it at the HR meeting," I said, my voice firm. "I don't want to just send an email. I want to see her face when she realizes she's been caught." "That's high risk, high reward," Chloe cautioned. "She'll try to lie her way out of it. You need to be prepared for anything." "I am," I replied, and I meant it. She tried to turn my brother into a monster. Now I'm going to show everyone the monster she really is. The final piece of the puzzle was still missing, the motive. But I had a feeling that when her lies were stripped away, the ugly truth of her obsession would finally be exposed. The meeting with Mr. Chen and Veronica was scheduled for Friday afternoon. That gave me 2 days to transform my collection of screenshots and digital breadcrumbs into an airtight case. This was where my skills as a data analyst became my greatest weapon. I wasn't just going to tell them what I found. I was going to present it as an irrefutable data story, complete with a timeline, evidence points, and logical conclusions. I spent Wednesday evening creating a PowerPoint presentation. It felt strangely like preparing for a quarterly business review, but instead of sales figures and user engagement metrics, my slides detailed a timeline of psychological harassment and digital stalking. Chloe came over with takeout and acted as my legal consultant and mock jury. "Okay, start from the beginning," she said, biting into a spring roll. "Walk me through it as if I'm David Chen." My first slide was titled "Formal Response to Allegations." The second slide was a picture of Daniel. It was my favorite one, taken on his 22nd birthday, just a few months before he died. He was grinning, his head tilted slightly, the scar on his chin barely visible. Beneath it, I wrote his name, his date of birth, and his date of death. "Let them see him as a person first," Chloe advised. "Humanize him before you even begin to defend him." Next, I laid out Veronica's claims in a simple, factual list, citing the date she made them to HR. Then, my presentation pivoted. The next slide was titled "A Counter-Timeline of Events." This was the core of my case. Point 1, the connection. I showed the photo of Veronica and Mark Renshaw at the Austin Marketing Conference, dated 7 months prior. I established their professional relationship. Point 2, the information gathering. I presented the evidence of Veronica's research. The screenshot from the photography website showing her VeroLane87 account following Mark's account. The date stamp was crucial, 2 months before her start date at Innovatech. Then, the bombshell, the screenshot of the fake Jenna S. Facebook profile showing it was friends with Veronica and that it had commented on the specific photo of Daniel and Mark. The date of the comment was 3 months ago. "This is your smoking gun," Chloe said, pointing at the screen. "This proves she was actively and covertly seeking information about your brother using a sock puppet account before her alleged harassment even began." Point 3, the deception at Innovatech. I detailed my personal interactions with Veronica since she started. I used direct quotes from my vlog. Her invasive questions about my family, her odd fixation on me not having a partner, and the chilling break room conversation where she specifically asked about a handsome older brother. "When you put it in a timeline," I said, clicking through the slides, "it's obvious. She wasn't making small talk. She was confirming the information she had already gathered. She was making sure Daniel was dead so she could use him in her story without fear of him showing up to contradict her." A wave of nausea washed over me as I said the words aloud. The sheer coldness of it was breathtaking. She had used the fact of his death as a strategic advantage. Chloe was silent for a moment. She's not just a liar, Hope. This is deeply disturbed behavior. There has to be a reason. That was the one thing my data couldn't explain. The motive. Why me? Why Daniel? I had racked my brain, searched every corner of my memory for a connection to Veronica Lane, and found nothing. We can't let the why distract us, Chloe said firmly. In a legal or HR setting, motive can be helpful, but it's not required. What's required is proof of wrongdoing. You have that. Her actions constitute severe harassment and the creation of a hostile work environment. You have proven she lied in a formal HR complaint. That's a fireable offense on its own. We spent the next hour refining the presentation. Chloe helped me phrase my conclusions in clear, professional language, avoiding emotional accusations and sticking to the evidence. The final slide was simple. It had 2 sections: facts established by evidence and unanswered questions. Under facts, I listed: Veronica initiated contact with a source from my brother's past months before her employment. Veronica used a fake social media profile to gather information about my brother. Veronica's formal complaint is based on a deceased individual, a fact she was likely aware of. Veronica's story is chronologically inconsistent with her own research activities. Under unanswered questions, I put only one. What is the motive behind this targeted and premeditated campaign of harassment? Leave them with that question, Chloe said. Let them wonder what kind of person does this. It shifts the focus from you having to explain yourself to Veronica having to explain the inexplicable. By the time Chloe left, I felt as prepared as I could be. My nerves were still frayed, but I had a plan. I had a script. I had evidence. The next day at work, I was a ghost. I kept my headphones on, spoke to no one, and focused on the clock, watching the minutes tick down to the 3 p.m. meeting. Veronica saw me in the hallway once. She gave me a look of pure contempt, a smug, confident sneer that said she had already won. She thought I was cornered. She thought I was a grieving sister she could easily manipulate and discard. She had no idea I had spent last 48 hours building a cage for her maid of her own digital footprints. She was walking into that meeting expecting a crying, emotional mess. She was going to get a data analyst with a flawlessly executed presentation of her downfall. The conference room felt cold and sterile. It was one of the smaller internal meeting rooms with no windows, just gray walls and a long, polished table. David Chen sat at the head of the table, his expression neutral but tense. I sat on one side, my laptop open in front of me. A moment later, Veronica walked in. She was the picture of composure and authority, dressed in a sharp navy blue suit. She gave me a brief, dismissive glance before turning her full attention to David, offering him a warm, professional smile. David, thank you for handling this so promptly. I know it's an uncomfortable situation for everyone. She was already controlling the narrative, positioning herself as the reasonable victim. She sat down opposite me, placing a leather-bound notebook on the table. She didn't look at me again. Thank you both for being here, David began, his voice calm and measured. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss the formal complaint filed by you, Veronica, and to give Hope a chance to respond. Veronica, you've made a very serious allegation of stalking and harassment against Hope's brother, which you claim she is aware of and complicit in. Hope, you have provided a death certificate for your brother, Daniel, stating he passed away 8 years ago. This is a profound contradiction, and we need to get to the bottom of it. Veronica sighed dramatically, her expression a perfect blend of sadness and frustration. David, with all due respect, documents can be forged. I know what I've experienced. This man, Daniel, has been making my life a nightmare. I believe Hope is deeply troubled and is protecting him. I'm worried about her, but I'm also worried about my own safety. It was a masterful performance. She was calm, articulate, and sounded completely convincing. For a terrifying second, I felt a flicker of doubt. Could this person, so poised and confident, really be the obsessive stalker my evidence suggested? Then I looked at the picture of Daniel on my laptop's home screen, and the resolve came rushing back. "Hope," David said, turning to me, "what is your response?" "My response," I said, my voice steady, "is that Veronica's complaint is not just false, but it's a premeditated and malicious attack. And I have the data to prove it." I turned my laptop around so David could see the screen, though I kept it angled away from Veronica. I've prepared a brief presentation outlining a timeline of events. It provides context that I believe HR has been missing. Veronica scoffed. "A presentation? This is an HR meeting, not a marketing pitch. What is this?" David held up a hand. "Let her speak, Veronica." I began, my voice clear and even, just as Chloe and I had rehearsed. I started with the slide of Daniel's photo. "This was my brother, Daniel. He was kind, funny, and he wouldn't have hurt anyone. He died on May 12th, 8 years ago." I then moved to the timeline. I showed the conference photo with Mark Renshaw. "Veronica, you attended a conference in Austin 7 months ago where you were on a panel. Is that correct?" She looked momentarily thrown. "Yes, I speak at many conferences. What's your point?" "My point is that a man named Mark Renshaw was in the audience. Mark was my brother's college roommate." I clicked to the next slide, showing the comment from the fake Jenna S. profile on the photo of Daniel. 3 months ago, a fake profile under the name Jenna S., a profile that is friends with you on Facebook, commented on this specific photo of my brother from Mark's album. This was weeks before your first day at Innovatech. Can you explain why you were using a fake account to investigate pictures of my deceased brother?" Veronica's composure finally cracked. A flush crept up her neck. "That's ridiculous. I don't know anything about a fake profile. Anyone could have made that. This is a pathetic attempt to distract from the real issue." "Is it?" I clicked to the next slide, showing the screenshot of her Vero Lane 87 account following Mark's photography page. "This is your username, is it not?" "Vero Lane 87? This is you, following my brother's old roommate on another platform again, before you were even employed here. You weren't being stalked, Veronica. You were researching. You were data mining my family's past to find a weapon you could use against me." David Chen was leaning forward now, his eyes fixed on the screen, his face a grim mask. He looked from the screen to Veronica, then back again. "This is insane," Veronica sputtered, her voice rising. "She's a tech nerd, she could have fabricated all of this." "Then let's talk about something that wasn't digital," I said, my voice dropping. "Let's talk about our conversation in the break room, when you asked me if I had a handsome older brother. You already knew I had a brother. You'd seen his picture. You even knew about the scar on his chin, a detail you mentioned to Mr. Chen, a detail clearly visible in the photo you investigated. You weren't asking a question. You were confirming your data point. You were trying to find out from me if he was still alive." Veronica stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I'm not going to sit here and listen to these paranoid delusions. She's the one who is unstable. Her brother is stalking me, and she is covering for him." It was then that the final piece of the puzzle, the missing why, fell into place. It wasn't about me. Not really. As she stood there, her face contorted with rage, I suddenly remembered a story Daniel had told me years ago, about Mark's messy breakup with a girl. He never told me her name, just that she was intense and couldn't let things go. She had apparently become obsessed with Daniel after the breakup, convinced he was the reason it ended. "It was you," I whispered, the realization dawning on me. "You're the girl from college. You dated Mark Renshaw." Veronica froze. The color drained from her face. "Daniel told you to leave Mark alone, didn't he?" I continued, the memory fragments coalescing. "He told you that your obsession was unhealthy. You never got over that. You hated him for it. And when you saw on Mark's profile that he was dead, you saw your chance for revenge. But you couldn't hurt Daniel anymore, so you decided to hurt the next best thing, his sister. You found out where I worked, you got a job here, and you built this entire insane fantasy to destroy my life and his memory." The room was utterly silent. Veronica stared at me, her mask of superiority completely shattered, revealing the raw, obsessive fury beneath. She didn't deny it. She couldn't. David Chen finally spoke, his voice low and cold. "Veronica, is this true?" She just stood there, trembling, her eyes wide with a mixture of hatred and defeat. In that moment, everyone in the room saw her for what she was. Not a victim, but a vindictive, disturbed woman who had carried a grudge for over a decade and built an elaborate fantasy to exact a pathetic revenge. Her final performance was over. The silence in the conference room stretched for what felt like an eternity. Veronica didn't answer David's question. She simply grabbed her notebook from the table, her movements stiff and jerky, and walked out of the room without another word. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving a profound and heavy quiet in its wake. David Chen let out a long, slow breath. He turned to me, his expression a mixture of apology and disbelief. "Hope," he said, his voice filled with a gravity I had never heard from him before. "On behalf of the company, I am so sorry. What you have just been put through is unconscionable. Thank you for your courage and for the incredible thoroughness of your investigation." "I just wanted to protect my brother's name," I said quietly, the adrenaline beginning to fade, leaving a deep-seated exhaustion in its place. "You did more than that," he replied. "You exposed something deeply wrong. Rest assured, we will handle this immediately." I didn't have to wait long to see what handling this meant. Less than an hour after the meeting, an email went out to the entire marketing department announcing that Veronica Lane was no longer with Innovatech Solutions, effective immediately. Later that afternoon, security was seen quietly packing up the contents of her corner office into a cardboard box. The shadow in the corner office was gone. The aftermath at work was strange. The official story was that she had left for personal reasons, but the rumor mill worked overtime. People who had been intimidated by her or had felt the sting of her sharp-tongued critiques were visibly relieved. My own teammates, who had seen how she targeted me, came to my desk one by one to offer quiet words of support. My friend Maya gave me a long hug and said, "I knew you were a data wizard, but I didn't know you were a superhero." The biggest relief, however, came from a call I made that evening. I called Mark Renshaw. It was an awkward conversation at first. I hadn't spoken to him in almost a decade, but I explained what had happened, how Veronica had used him and an old photo to build her web of lies. He was horrified. "Oh my God, Hope, I am so sorry," he said, his voice full of shame. "Veronica, yeah, we dated in college, it was bad. After we broke up, she got weird. She blamed Daniel for everything. I never thought after all this time." He trailed off. "Daniel was a good guy. He was a great friend. I'm sorry for how things ended between us. He deserved better than what she did to his memory." Hearing him say that, hearing someone else affirm the goodness of my brother, felt like a weight lifting off my chest that I didn't even know I was still see. Oriang, her motive wasn't some grand, complex conspiracy. It was a petty, decade-old grudge held by a deeply obsessive person. She wanted to posthumously punish Daniel for rejecting her obsession, and I was the unfortunate proxy. In the weeks that followed, a quiet peace began to settle back into my life. The vlog on my computer was deleted. My evenings were no longer spent scouring the internet for clues, but were once again filled with books, quiet dinners with Chloe, and the simple comfort of my routine. Work returned to normal, or even better than normal, without Veronica's toxic presence looming over everything. One Saturday, a month after it all ended, I drove to the cemetery. It was a crisp autumn day, and the leaves were turning brilliant shades of red and gold. I sat on the grass by Daniel's headstone, tracing the letters of his name with my finger. "Hey, Danny," I whispered to the quiet air. "It's been a weird few weeks. Someone tried to tell lies about you, someone from way back, but don't worry, I took care of it." I told him the whole story, from the strange questions in the break room to the final, silent confrontation in the conference room. It felt good to say it all out loud, to give the story to him, the person it was really about. When I finished, I felt a sense of finality, of a chapter truly closing. Veronica hadn't just attacked me, she had disturbed his rest, and now he could be at peace again. And so could I. My work is about finding the truth in the numbers, about cutting through the noise to find a clear, logical pattern. For a while, my life had become a chaotic mess of lies and manipulation. But in the end, I used my skills not just to win a battle at work, but to defend the most important thing in my world, my family's honor and a good man's memory. The data didn't just get someone fired. It delivered justice for my brother, and it allowed me to finally, truly heal.